Well, welcome to the fifth of 9 videos looking at the political frame. And what we're going to do during this particular video is dig in deep to political skills and look at the 4 key political skills associated with exercising political power. So here they are without any pause at all. You have agenda setting, mapping the political terrain, networking and building coalitions, and bargaining and negotiating. And the cartoon to the right is a great example of agenda setting in terms of the exam that each of these animals is going to have to take. And so I'm not quite sure. Either the bird or the monkey has the lead here. Depends on how far away from the tree they are and how high in the tree they have to get. All right, but anyway, you've got the idea here. Political skills, 4 key competencies. This idea of agenda setting, mapping the political terrain, networking and building coalitions, and bargaining and negotiating. All right, so let's start and peel this onion and look at agenda setting. So when you look at things again from a structural perspective, an agenda is just outlines a goal and a schedule of activities. Yeah, sure. But from a political perspective, no. An agenda is a statement of interests and a scenario for getting various goods. So it's very, very different. You know, in one case, very rational approach. In the second case, a very rational approach again, but within a different context. And what we're doing is then looking at kind of 2 techniques for doing this. One is this idea of planting seeds, of going around, planting the seed of an idea, letting it, mature, if you will. And then it starts to float around from many other points of view that, hey, this is a really good idea. Hey, this is a really good idea. And if you do it carefully, then what will happen is the person other than the innovator will get the credit for it. It was their idea. But it allows you to set the agenda and bring something forward. The other component of this is when you're a little bit more transparent in what you're doing is trying to have 2 major elements. What's your vision? What's the long-term interests of key parties? How does this help key parties? How does it solve a problem that they've got? And then the second is a strategy for doing that, recognizing that you're going to have some competing internal and external forces, some people that want it to happen or don't want it to happen. So this brings us to a close. I've got a picture of Ronald Reagan there because he was great at doing this. Imagine or think back or go Google and research first 90, 100 days that President Reagan came into office. You know, the nation and its psyche was in the doldrums. We had just emerged from the Iran hostage crisis. Inflation was bad. Life was not good, and Ronald Reagan was able to come in and from a myriad of different challenges facing the United States, he picked 2 and then immediately took action. He was able to present a compelling vision, and then he had a strategy that had face validity and present that strategy to the nation and move those agendas forward. All right, let's go to the second of our political skills, and this is mapping the political terrain. And here are the kind of 4 steps associated with it. First of all is determining how's information going to get about, who are the principal agents that are going to play in that, how can you mobilize internal and external players, and how can you deploy or anticipate and respond effectively to counter strategies that others are likely to employ. And I really like the 2 exhibits from the book. This is the first one, that exhibit 10.1, is looking at the political map as seen by the techies. And they look at top management having lots of power here and being very pro-change. And they see the middle managers and frontline officials as being opposed to the change, but not that much, and also not having that much power. When you look at Exhibit 10.2, the real political map, The techies had accurately depicted where they are, but top management was not that much, not as much on board in terms of pro-change as they thought, and the middle managers and frontline managers have much more power than the techies thought, and they're also much more opposed to the change, and so got a different kind of a fight facing them. All right, so this is the second of 4. We've talked about mapping the political terrain, talked about 4 steps associated with mapping the political terrain. We're now going to move on to this idea of networking and building coalitions. So managers fail often to get things done because they rely too much on reason and too little on relationships. Sounds sad. We need relationship training for managers. Here are the kind of 4 steps again for looking at this. Isn't it interesting that we're taking a structural approach to building political power? Anyway, so the 4: identify relevant relationships. Assess who's going to fight you on this, why and how strongly. Develop possible links with these opponents to facilitate communications, education, and negotiation. And if that fails, maybe we need a different technique or something that's perhaps more forceful to either limit their influence or get them on board where they're supportive of the particular project that you're pursuing. All right, well, let's continue to look at this. So when you're building these networks and building these coalitions, you've got a perception of viable people in authority. Are they credible, competent, and sensible? And as you start to look at perhaps a hierarchy, first thing you want to do is get your boss on board. Next thing you want to do is make sure you got some cheerleaders, some supporters, and then start horse trading rewards in exchange for resources and support for the others who you need to get on board. Interesting way of doing this. Definitely agree with getting the boss on board and getting the cheerleaders on board. The horse trading becomes a little bit more challenging, but again, if you're thoughtful in doing this, you can work it behind the scenes so that you don't have open conflict within the organization, that conflict is managed. Conflict's still there, but it's managed conflict. All right, well, let's now go down and talk about the 4th of these kind of political skills, and that's bargaining and negotiations. So the first one talks a little bit about what negotiation is. You got 2 parties with some interests in common, others in conflict, and they need to come to an agreement. All right, so how do you do that negotiation? And the book splits it into 2 different types of dilemmas. One is to create value, and that's where the goal of the successful negotiation is inventive and cooperative, and you're looking for a win-win solution. And the second is claim value, and that is win-win's not enough. I want win-lose. We're going to do some hard bargaining, and I'm going to get as much out of this as I possibly can. So a dilemma between this create value and claim value. And what you'll see in the next video is we'll actually talk about Bill Gates as one of these guys who claims value. It should be very interesting. All right, but before we get to that, let's finish up on bargaining and negotiation. And what we're going to do now is talk about 4 strategies for principled bargaining. Do you sense a reoccurring theme of the number 4? It's like every step has 4 things to it within this particular movie. Well, anyway, here we go. 4 strategies for principled bargaining. So first, you want to separate people from the problem. Good luck with that, because remember we're talking back in the HR frame, one of the things that organizations like to do is to blame people. If something's not working well, let's blame the people. But for principled bargaining, we want to pull the people away from the problem. Second is to focus on interests and not positions. What are the mutual interests of the groups, not the fixed positions before you come into it. The third is to invent options for mutual gain instead of locking into the first alternative that comes to mind. So you can't show all your cards, and you got to allow some cards to be played by the other parties so that you create a platform for inventing these options. And then the fourth one is to insist on objective criteria and standards for fairness, both for substance and procedure. And again, good luck with that, because if you go back to agenda setting, or you go back to generally bargaining in general, people don't like to do that because it kind of locks them in. So anyway, we've talked about 4 strategies for principled bargaining. I agree with all 4. There are challenges associated with doing those. Some people don't want to be principled in their bargaining. They really want to claim value, and they really want to make it a win-lose situation. So you just have to work through that. All right, well, that brings us to the close of this particular video. We started out by looking at political skills, agenda setting, mapping the political terrain, networking, and building coalitions, and then bargaining and negotiating. And we've kind of dug into each of those 4. What we're going to do during the next video is we're going to come back and look at the value claiming. I'll give you an example using Bill Gates, and then we'll go through the value claiming process. So study hard, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.